30, so we're going to get started. Call the meeting to order. We have Noah and Emily on. They are going to be our consultants from BFJ Planning. But before we get to them, we're going to go through the minutes. Has everybody reviewed the minutes from last meeting, February 27th? Does anyone have any corrections or changes that need to be made?
Not I.
I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes from February 27th.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So now we're going to turn it over to Noah and Emily from BFJ Planning. They're our new consultants for the comp plan. Hi, guys.
Hey, thanks so much for inviting us, and greetings, Shelter Islands. So today we'd like to introduce ourselves. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, we're just making it louder in the room, so it's easier for people.
Should I? I'll wait.
Not clear. There's a little echoey. Echo. But if it could be louder, Coco, maybe that'll help.
Subtitles on.
Testing.
Simultaneous translation. TV.
Now let's try it.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
You have a speaker.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
I'll put on headphones. Sometimes that works a little bit better. Hold on one
Yeah,
second.
try that. That would be worth a try. Muddy.
Yeah.
Is the sound better now?
Oh, much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
You don't sound like you're underwater.
That sounds like a yes. All right, note taken. Use headphones all the time. So we're happy to be here with you today. We have a short presentation to go over what we've been tasked to do, our approach in the process to update the comprehensive plan, get to the finish line, as it were. And so if it's okay with you, I'd like to just kind of walk you through the process. Bear with me. Coco, whoever is running this, do you mind allowing us to share our screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Okay. Okay, so we're here today. We have our agenda. Essentially, we'll do an introduction. We'll go over our scope and timeline, talk about the next step, which is largely the review of the chapters written, which are posted online, which I'm sure most of you know about. We'll talk about the engagement strategies, and I'm sure a lot of you have some thoughts and suggestions for that. We'll talk about some priority issues and concerns, although we understand that we'd like to keep things at a kind of a high level today because there's so many issues to talk about. And we'd like to kind of focus in on them at future meetings or, kind of more targeted discussions, and then we'll go into next steps. We're here from BFJ Planning. The core team is myself, Noah Levine. I'll be the principal in charge for this project. My family also happens to live in Southampton, and I spend all my summers out there, so I know Shelter Island well. I'm joined by Emily Juncker.
This is Emily.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Emily. Hi.
We also do have a fairly deep team. There are members who couldn't attend tonight. Frank Fish is our resource principal for land use and zoning. If there's a question, anything having to do with zoning in the region or environmental review, he's really your guy. Jonathan Martin, he's our principal for urban design. He teaches at Pratt and Columbia. Susan Favade, also another planner. She'll be heavily involved in the editing portion, and also she'll be involved with land use and zoning. We have George Jacquemart, who is a engineer as well as a planner, and so he'll be involved with transportation. And then Christine Jimenez is support for urban design. So we do have a fairly deep team, and we can bring in other resources as needed to address topics that come up. I don't want to go into too much of the kind of the marketing for us, wanted to let you know that we do a lot of comprehensive plans and other plans as well. But this slide just shows our experience throughout the region, New York State, Connecticut, New Jersey, as well as communities in other states. We have done a lot of work on Long Island. We know it's kind of a different area on Long Island. In particular, we've done a lot of work on the East End. Recently, we helped the Southampton Village adopt their comprehensive plan. We just finished at the end of last year. As you know, Southampton Village is very different in a lot of ways, but it experiences a lot of similar things that other communities on the East End are experiencing, such as seasonal population, a naturally occurring retirement community. So you have an aging population, growth and development pressures, traffic congestion, cost of living, limited affordable housing, wastewater issues, and also the preservation of natural resources. These were all issues that were at the forefront, which we understand are also at the forefront in Riverhead. And we did focus on specifically the implementation of zoning recommendations, and we're helping them to develop zoning now as a kind of a subsequent action. We're also working in the town of Riverhead to update their comprehensive plan. It's similar in many ways, but of note, this is a project that was started by another firm, and they got somewhat stalled in the process. So we are helping the town to land the ship there as well. So we are kind of all over the place on the East End, which is good. This slide just shows our proposed schedule for the project. I know that sometimes these Gantt charts can be a little bit confusing, so I'll try to walk you through it.
Yeah, I have that.
Essentially, we started last month. We've maybe even less than a month. We've been really at this. We had a meeting with the task force to talk about priority actions to take and kind of how we're going to kick this off. As you see here, we're meeting with you kind of at the beginning of month 2, but we're meeting you a little bit earlier in the process. The light blue squares are the CPAC meetings. So we have monthly meetings with the task force, and we have about 3 meetings with you all as we develop and refine the plan. Task 1E, we talked about a workshop and what we would do for the first workshop. And we came up with an idea to kind of have a hybrid workshop / survey where we would have a presentation of our kind of draft ideas and as a kind of an online presentation, so that people who are in the community, as well as those that are seasonal or maybe weekenders, can view it. We thought that this would be a way to kind of open it up for everybody. And so we would present the various topics and then have a comment form. So that would be kind of an online exercise. And then we would have a more traditional public workshop towards in month 6. So, I suppose that would be end of the summer, closer to the fall, where we would have people come in and kind of see the recommendations and really test those out with the community before they're formalized. In the next 2 months, we will also be hosting a series of topical area groups and targeted meetings with stakeholders so we could better understand some of the key issues. And so we really see that as an important step in the process. There are a lot of topics that I'm sure need further refinement. And so we will look to the really the experts in the community, which are you all and many others that know some of these issues well. And then we'll have meetings with the town board periodically to keep them posted. I know many of the town board are involved in the creation of the plan, but this document will need to be approved by the board at some point. So we want to make sure that they are familiar with the process. And task 2 really talks about kind of our process, which I'll go into in a little bit. But the first stage is really reviewing the work that's been done. And then task 2B is refining that work. And then in the end, really focusing on implementation actions and making sure that there is a to-do list moving forward. And then we also show the seeker process, which would happen concurrently so that the plan could be adopted when the seeker process is concluded and there's a determination. This slide just mentions what I had already just mentioned, but I think we wanted to just highlight this kind of virtual presentation of the plan chapters with an opportunity for comments. That's something that we think will be an important opportunity for input in the first phase of the project. We have received chapters from Meg and BJ, and those chapters that are posted online, as well as comments that we've that have been posted to date. We will have a meeting with the town to kind of discuss our approach to editing these chapters. But essentially, I'm just going to skip this chapter. But essentially, what we'd like to do is have a thorough review and make sure that all the chapters are reviewed by our various staff members that bring different expertise to the project. And I think I mentioned before, Frank would be involved in land use and zoning, and Jonathan Martin for urban design, and so on. Everyone brings different things to the table, so we'll all be looking at the documents that have been prepared. One thing we will look to do is create a document that is digestible and easily accessible, not just for those town board members and staff, but also for the layperson. So we want it to be a document that everyone understands, so that recommendations are kind of clear cut, and so that the vision is well understood. And that can be done both by simplifying and kind of drawing out the big ideas, but also with graphics that help to illustrate some of these ideas. And this just shows kind of that concept of what we did in Hoboken, where we discussed the existing conditions as kind of trends. For example, in Hoboken, the Hoboken population grew significantly. And rather than having an encyclopedic approach, we'll look to identify those key data points. And then hopefully develop a plan that is action oriented. So once we confirm the community's vision, that shared vision, and we confirm that, we could develop a solid framework for plans, initiatives, and investments. A most important thing in the comprehensive plan is probably the land use chapter, because it lays the foundation for zoning changes, should those be appropriate. And so we want to make sure that those ideas are vetted. And then also we can create a implementation matrix, which is essentially a to-do list. So this document can have a life of 10 years, but it can also be tracked every year to see what has been done and what needs what needs work. So what I've done is I've kind of essentially laid out our plan for the next 8 months or so. It's hopefully to take the really solid framework that has been done. I wanted to have a kind of a poll today, but we couldn't really get the Zoom functionality to work. But essentially, for starters, as a conversation, we were curious to know how much of the plan folks on this call have read, and if you're kind of familiar, if you've read through all the chapters or only some of them. We're curious to know how much of the plan is generally okay and how much of it needs work. And if there are chapters and topics that need work, what are those? Because we really kind of need to have a launch pad to get started on the writing, and so we can present back to the community what's there. And when we work with the community, we really want to make sure that we're testing recommendations, and because we do have stuff to present, we want to make sure what's okay and what needs work before we go back to the community. So I think it's probably a good place just to kind of stop the presentation and open it up a little bit for kind of a wider discussion.
General questions or wider discussion?
More of like, how far are you all in your tracking of what's going on? What's in the chapters?
Let's start with that, and we can move on to other things.
Also, we might want to talk about our role.
Right, but right now,
more perspective.
He's sort of guiding this conversation. So let's start with this.
He went through that already. Don't you think?
So how far along are we in grappling with the entire thing?
So I guess I'll start and maybe we can go around.
Sure.
So I'd say arguably the bigger, more impactful chapters, land use, zoning, natural resources, were only recently open for our review. Still working through some of those chapters, and obviously they have a lot of implications. So those, I think, definitely have a lot more, or at least some amount of comments from us left. I feel pretty confident and comfortable with the other chapters not mentioned that we've been going across. So pretty much all of them outside of those three.
Okay, maybe we can just go around the room. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a similar position as Sean. The most recent chapters, I've only skimmed through because I've been moving house. But the other chapters, I'm fairly familiar with, and have really been waiting for the consultants to come on board so we can really do some real work and have our comments processed and with their expertise in mind. So
Noah,
Oh, wait, can I just interrupt real quick? Sorry. We didn't, in the beginning, we didn't kind of talk about who's here. So maybe before you talk, maybe you can just introduce yourself. And I'm
So sorry.
No, it's my,
my name is Benjamin Diet. I'm the guy that sent you that email.
okay.
You want to introduce yourself, Sean?
Yeah, and first, I'm Sean Clark.
Great.
Julia Weisenberg, I'm on the task force with BJ and Meg.
Hi, so I'm Rebecca Mundy. I'm on the advisory committee, and I would agree with Sean and Ben exactly. We've hit the meatier part, and that's where we need to do more work. We're waiting for exactly this moment for you to step in and really guide us through. I think the committee and task force has done a really good job with those earlier chapters, really laying out like where we stand, where we are, and moving it forward.
Meg Larson on the task force. We've spoken.
Hi, Noah and Emily, Pedro Schmidt. Thank you so much for your presentation. So I think I would agree to a certain extent, but I may also have some different perspectives. So I think to me, the demographic chapter is really important because I think we need to have, and I've said this before, so my colleagues here will be familiar with my comments. I think we need to make sure that there are key data elements that we all agree upon and go back to the previous plans and sort of track what has happened with population since 1990, housing units. And I know some of these are contained within the chapters, but I think we need to make sure we have consistent data, that we're looking at it and really telling the narrative, and that we all have agreement. You know, what has the population growth been? How does that contrast to maybe some other East End communities that you've worked with? What has happened with housing units? What has happened with water usage? And so you'll notice in the meeting minutes from the last meeting, I volunteered to work directly with you on data. I'm a consultant by background, so I'm not in your line of work, but I would be happy to do that. So I think that to me is a grounding piece that we all just really need to agree on key metrics and how that feeds through all the chapters. And I'm sure Meg and BJ and others have told you that we did break into subcommittees and assign various chapters that we, kind of worked on as subcommittees. I think some of those were reviewed more than others. So getting your perspective on those, I think will be, certainly very important. And then a final question that I just have is, and I know Lily alluded to this, is our role, right? I noticed you've only got 3 meetings with us. And so I wanted to understand, what are those meetings? And you're obviously going to be coming to these meetings as well. So what do those 3, teal boxes represent?
I might ask it a little differently, which is, in previous engagements, have towns split a group like ours into a task force and an advisory committee? Because it seems like both should get all the same information in the same meeting.
Yes, right.
It really depends, to be honest. I would say that we've done it both ways. Sometimes the advisory committee can be a little bit more as a way to kind of test ideas with the public before and to plan for like outreach exercises, whereas the task force sometimes can be people that have a bit more of a technical background, such as your department heads and people that kind of understand the material fairly well and are going to be involved in the content writing. It varies. There's no set way to do it. Sometimes it's just one big community, committee. I would say the one thing you don't want to have is a committee that is very, very large. You kind of want to, especially one that's managing the process, you want to keep it kind of at a manageable size, from our perspective as just to manage the project. But as far as, the organization of what you want the committee, this committee to be and the role, I certainly think that's a conversation to have with us in consultation with, with Meg and BJ and so on. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
So I'm next, BJ. I'm interested in what Petra said, and I think it's a point we need to come back to quoting, we all need to agree, and I don't think we do, and nor can we. Because the town's never going to agree. We all need to agree on data. Well, no, I think that some of us will.
I'm going to disagree with that.
I'm not talking about real, I'm not talking about alternative
Pieces of
facts.
data that you have to have some agreement on.
I promise you. No, there are, but no, not we all have to agree. I disagree.
Are you talking about the source of the data, making sure it's consistent
Yeah.
sourcing for the data?
But I
Yeah,
think
that's
we
a
also
different-
collectively
different
have to agree on certain parameters,
Yes.
right? I mean, I think we can
Not
all,
all of us, no. Why can't it
Yes,
be a
we do.
majority? Why can't it be a majority?
No, it's not the way it is. We
No,
all
that
know,
is the way it is. This is
well,
America.
at least two of us, I think Petra has experience, and I'm an urban sociologist. I've taught planners, et cetera. We do need parameters with data that is consistent, that we can find the source for, and that we agree upon even the categories. There are chapters with units that I think are driven by, I don't know,
But I think that's the.
not by the criteria I would use.
General facts.
To determine what the most appropriate statistical basis is for this plan.
To show whatever it is you're
It's
trying to show.
exactly.
agree.
So it's
I
the
would agree.
consultant's job to do.
But
You
I
might
think
want
we,
this little piece, but the consultant is saying,
Right.
no, this illustrates it better.
Right.
Oh, that's a little different.
I mean, it sounds like this isn't a topic that people feel strongly about. I mean, we have opinions and kind of our approach to the plan, which we can present. But I certainly understand that when it comes to data, people have different approaches. One thing we would like to do is to make sure that we get data that is accurate and data that we think that is telling the story that we think is correct. It's difficult, I read through the demographic section and it sounds like the Census 2020 data may not have captured or may have captured maybe too much growth, or, it was a little bit maybe misleading based on when the census was done. And I think that you can point to other estimates, but describe them as such and not say that there are, exact numbers. If you say that it's likely that, so we can do our best to tell the story,
Right.
but we don't want to lend statistic validity to certain things. But that's okay, so long as we explain that we think that there are, more or less people than that was captured in the census, and this is why. And you don't say that this is the number that we need to be working towards. Just, it's a story and it's a policy document. It's not necessarily a scientific encyclopedia of everything that's happening in the community, in our perspective, but we can certainly work on that.
Oh, I think it's me now, or did you, BJ?
No, I'm done.
You're done?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just,
Lily Hoffman, and I'm a member of the advisory committee. And I think I personally have read all but the last chapter on governance. I haven't put my comments yet in, but I think that if we look at the history, you should understand, I'm sure you've been told a little bit of the history of our hardworking committee, who has worked very hard off and on over 3 years now. And some of the chapters we labored over as a group intensively. And we did feel, and we did hope that we'd have consultants at a certain point to make everything, to help us with what we couldn't handle ourselves, including data. Some chapters there was a period of time, a few months back, when 3 chapters, let's see, Petra, Ben and I did economic development. We farmed chapters out, transportation, I think that was you and Jay. And there was a 3rd chapter, social.
Utilities.
Utilities, right. So they were done actually by 3 teams of members of our CPAC. Then we get to the last 4 and perhaps the most heavy chapters. We have not discussed them as a group. We had no hand in writing them. I have a little trouble with this. They appeared drafted by the members of the town board. Whoever drafted them, we have not been told, but they appeared and we have not yet discussed them. This includes zoning. This includes natural resources and environment, governance, and housing. Very, very hefty chapters. And my feeling is that at least 2 of them that I've read have a very strong, dare I say it, ideological stance that I feel is not appropriate in a comprehensive plan in which you're looking and weighing the costs and benefits of trying to attend to the variety of factors that affect a given community, its resources, its people, et cetera. So I'm not sure how to better say this, but I hope that we'll have a lot of time to work with you and that you'll reach out to a large segment of the community. There are many groups on the island who I think would really benefit by speaking with you. And I also want to point out that I hope you also get the work from our past consultants, which included, I believe, 1,000-person survey, something like 1,000 people responded. And as is, again, it's not a scientific sample, people had to respond. But it's a very interesting study, and you should, with its faults, you know, as is everything. But I think you should include all of this in your view. I'm sure you're very sophisticated in the politics of community life, particularly if you think the problems are all federal. You're very familiar now with the whole East End, and none of this is new to you. And we really look forward to working with you.
Yeah, likewise. I think those comments are well taken, and I think that we would welcome comments on which topics specifically are areas where there's some tension in the community, because we'll need to, have conversations. Like I said before, when I, asked the question, I'm sure a lot of the plan is good. Even in the land use chapter, I'm sure there are a lot of things that everyone would agree on. I could be wrong, but that would be my guess. But there are probably, who knows, 20%, whatever it happens to be of action items that really need exploration. And so we can spend our time focusing on those to try and, get consensus or develop a vision. If there's not a consensus, I think it's okay in a plan to say that a community is divided on this particular issue, and this is something that the community needs to explore.
Absolutely. That's what we're here.
Wendy, would you like to go next?
Sure. If I speak from here, is it audible or
Can you
not?
hear her?
Yeah, sorry, Wendy. That's okay.
Come join us.
Want to take my seat?
Hi, my name is Wendy Turgeon. I am also a member of the Community Advisory Committee. True confessions, I've generally stayed on top of reading the chapters and adding comments, but the last group as listed in our minutes, I have not had a chance to look at late. When they show up late in the week, sometimes I don't get to them. So I do agree with Lily that we do need to have time to digest them, and Sean brought up the same question there. One other comment I would weigh in is I do agree that we need to have a consistent data set, and it has to be a parallel there. But I also believe that data is just numbers. What it means is where we sometimes find disagreement. So the narratives, the stories that come out of what this data tells us is where we might find some varying views within the community and even within our small committee here. And again, we're not going to make everyone happy, but we do have to kind of look at the big picture and try to include as many people and at least be alert to potential issues that might arise as we move through the plan. That would be my suggestion.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
John?
John Kerr, also a member of this illustrious group. I feel like I've read every chapter at least once through. I'm still working on governance and the environment one. I'm still having problems with some of those. And I think I made comments on all of them as I go along, but if something keeps coming up and go through. A couple of things that I worked on the 1974 comprehensive plan, which we threw in the garbage can, and Tom Jern did very beautifully at the town, at the school. We also did I worked in the 93, the 2008, and 2016. So I've done this many times, and what we really need to do, and I think the challenge I'm going to give you guys, is that we need a way of making sure that this document is a living document. And unfortunately, all the ones in the past have provided a doorstop material, or they've just been overlooked. And even now, as we proceed with all the big issues that we're talking about now, and we're supposedly still following the 1993 plan, we sort of conveniently ignore it when we come to big ticket items to try and solve. There has to be a way, and you probably have a vast experience in doing this, that each item that comes before a town board would have to have, like, for example, a tear-off checklist that shows this item meets the comprehensive plan in point A, C, whatever it may be. And you do not even talk about it unless it does come up or is part of the comprehensive plan. And you must show that with every decision made. Some way of keeping the board accountable with every single activity that they do, that we're working that comprehensive plan. Otherwise, we're wasting our time and spinning our wheels here. I don't want to say that we are, but I don't want to do this again and see it not happen. So there's got to be not just codifying this into the activity of the board, but something like that. Another point that I thought was really important, on all these other comprehensive plans that I've worked on, we all had a lot of community involvement. Our community involvement so far has been early on. We had, before COVID, we had a chance to meet with public groups, and we went out and talked, we canvassed, and there was a large fervor of interest and concern. Now we're sort of relying on people who are computer savvy and able to make comments. And that definitely limits a part of our population I'm really concerned about. Going back to those individual face-to-face things, I don't know how we'll accomplish that. I'm sure it's possible, but it's something that we're missing. And just like we mentioned here, that some of our chapters, we've been able to have face-to-face discussions as these, just this group here, which is an important group to at least have a preliminary talk about things. The more recent chapters, we haven't had that opportunity. Just as we hash it out or explain our ideas or even our comments, sometimes it's just really important because each one of us represents really a little pocket of Shelter Island. And, we all travel on our own little paths, whatever they may be on the island, meeting people. And so we bring those concerns. And I don't think we get a chance to really represent our public that way in just our small group. So for what it's worth, thank you.
Yeah. Can I?
Excellent.
Well put.
Yeah, I just want to add some comments because those are some really good points. Just some things that come to mind. The first thing was, and this has come up from a bunch of people, I think, about the concern about the chapters that have been drafted most recently, such as the land use and zoning and housing. We have our timeline is, we're not going to, we don't want to take longer than we need to, but it's not as if we're ready to, produce the document right away. I think we want to make sure that there's ample time for the community to review these chapters, and we don't want to move ahead before there's buy-in. So we understand that that draft document has been recently done, but there certainly will be enough time for you all to review it before we kind of edit it and craft it, and also work with the community to refine those ideas. And then also the idea, the notion of a living document, we fully support. And I think we talked about the idea of having a robust action item, action items. And the draft chapters as they're written right now have a bullet point list of a lot of different things that could be done. We see there's an opportunity there to really lengthen that section and to talk more specifically about what that means and how that can be done. For each of the items, whose responsibility it is, what's the time frame, what's the priority. And we think that section is something that could be reviewed by a group every year to see what's been done, what's still a priority, what's not a priority, so that the document can remain a living document. You can cross things off as appropriate.
Sounds good.
So, may I just raise a question relevant to the discussion? I think that we have been through the pandemic, which has caught us all in all sorts of ways. And I was struck again by hearing the comments about how, yes, some of our public engagement has been very dependent upon the computer savvy. I mean, we have a large senior population on this island. As you pointed out, we're a naturally occurring retirement community in Newark. And this is not to say that the seniors are not more technically savvy than my grandsons, but I'm not sure. However, I do have some questions, particularly with public engagement and the fact that this island is a few thousand now, but by the time June comes, we're going to be, 12,000. What is our latest count? 12, 13, 14,000 people. People who use this island and not just day trippers. And I'm just wondering why there is such a rush timetable in lieu of the need to make a living document to really get engagement from all parts of the community. Secondly, the town board. The town board's going to possibly radically change in the November elections. Why hurry to rush this through before the November elections when in fact we could have more time to open this up for public engagement during the summer months when people are here and active and involved, and perhaps get a better sense of what John was referring to as a living document, not to feel we have to rush everything through with such a tight, I'm afraid, a really tight timetable. I'm a little worried about that.
Well, all the large public engagements are taking place June, July, August, September, when the most people are here. So I don't think that's rushing it. That's optimizing the time when people are present.
Okay.
So that's really the majority of the heavy lifting and all the work and the real public engagement takes place during our peak months of occupancy.
And,
So
Mitch
I feel
McConnell
like
wasn't
that's well planned.
Mitch McConnell wasn't right.
Well, he never is, but.
But I mean, this is the town board that we have. And we have the I would say almost the responsibility to do the work that's before us. And this is the work that's before us, rather than saying, well, let's push it off to the next.
No,
one.
I'm not saying
That's
push
been
it
happening
off.
for decades.
I was responding, I believe, to Noah Levine's sense that we have to really work, we have a tight time limit. And I do know how long comprehensive plan usually takes, which is longer than 8 months. And I know. Believe me, I can't tell you the number of unpaid hours I've put in, and each one of us has put in on this. I mean, seriously.
No shortage of hard work here.
No shortage of work. No, I thought it was responding to Noah's sense that we've got to really get on this and track this down. And I was thinking, why the rush? So what if we finished a draft in November and had it before the board, and then decided had December, the end of the year as our line? Why this tight?
Can I-
That's all I'm saying.
I don't think loosey-goosey has served us
Right,
well.
well, let's let Noah answer. That's all.
Well, I didn't really mean to give the impression that we were in a rush to do this document. We are really working, you're our client. We are working under your timeline, and we want to make sure that the plan is adopted and is community supported. We're working, under, with you, and if there's a better time to do outreach and we need to lengthen, that's fine. A lot of communities want the plan done as quickly as possible. They want it done yesterday. So, that's kind of under the paradigm that we're typically used to. So if we, need to take our time, that's okay. We don't want to take too much time because what can happen is you get planning fatigue, town boards change, you lose momentum and so on. So, so we just want to be mindful of that, but we want to, do something that's reasonable and appropriate. We don't want to rush things. I just want to be clear about that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your answer.
I just also, the last couple of questions that you asked, what I perceived in your questioning was to make sure that the community is aptly represented. That's not just, that the elderly who are not tech savvy are somehow excluded, or that the people who are not here during all year in the winter or in the summer, you want to make sure that their input's included in it. So the thing is, just going back to the timeline, and Meg pulled it out, but I was going to ask Noah anyway to put that up again, but to answer that question, we're saying that it's June,
July, August, September.
Yeah, so that's the answer. That's what's going to get those people who are not usually here, who are going to be here. So we have to,
As well as Zoom. Good.
so it's, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that those people who are here, that we get them involved. But I think that's a separate matter from the timeline. I think the timeline is going to stay the way it is, but if we didn't have this, then I'd say, yes, that's erroneous, but we've got it built in to make sure
The
that.
only thing I would add is that I don't think we should be that concerned about the timeline. We should be more concerned about just doing it right.
Yes.
I agree.
I don't care what the timeline is personally.
Concerned about both. I think that we should set ourselves at least a goal of like, okay, these 3 chapters that everybody wants to review. Let's get them done in month 1, that's April.
In 1 month.
Let's get some meetings on the calendar and get to work. Otherwise, we don't have a quorum, we can't do it, it doesn't work, and we're looking at September again. This is not a way to run a country.
But to be honest, I'd be kind of annoyed if you guys that are leaving, BJ, if you guys that were leaving the town board just said, well, whatever, we're leaving. I'd rather see them on task, and I'm gonna, finish this up properly than just dump it off to the next board.
I'm not sure.
Make sure we're gonna consider.
We can get public opinion and get three chapters like zoning, housing, and maybe natural resources done in 1 month.
Well,
I'm not sure.
we're not sure that's. So here's the best way forward. We have consultants, which we want.
Yes.
The consultants are the professionals. They're going to guide us. You set a plan, and what you do is you work towards your plan. You work to keep moving forward. And, we've been at this for 3 years. I don't have 3 more years to give. I would like to do this in the shortest period of time. So we just have to keep doing our due diligence, and we're going to see how we get to the end of this path.
Let's do the controversial stuff like zoning in April. Let's do that in July. Okay.
What the public does is read something that is our considered piece, done.
And they can give comments on it.
Not they're working on it with us.
There's multiple phases to this. This is just like the rough draft. Once the draft is done, it goes back to the public. The public looks at it. You have a public meeting, you have a lot of input, and then it goes back to the drawing board. It's not like the draft that you all see now is it. I mean, that is like the roughest of rough. You're supposed to be putting your comments on that draft so we can then give that draft with your comments included to the consultants for their consideration. So it's up to you to read the chapters, put your comments in like you have on every other chapter we've done. So that can be forwarded to the consultants. It's the same process. We just haven't had the verbal discussion about your comments. So put them on the chapter, we'll send them to the consultants, we can discuss it. The draft will then go in front of the public for review, for public comment with public, consideration, then it will be revised.
And
That's
also,
the
don't forget in here
process.
is not only the public writ large, but individual groups.
Like meeting with the different homeowners
Going
associations,
to the
meeting
luncheon,
with,
Presbyterian Church for the
meeting with the senior
seniors,
center,
starting them up.
meeting,
Yes,
and
talking to the fire
that
department.
is certain.
The first iteration of all
Ready
this.
to do more. I
You
mean,
went out and had some barbecue and talked, are considering doing that again?
Yes,
'Cause that was very
absolutely.
effective.
That's part of the public input that we're looking for in the summer.
Nothing has changed.
But we also
No.
need feedback.
We now just have guidance from people who know what they're doing, so we don't make mistakes and miss things that were great opportunities.
Well, so this may be a great time to like switch to the roles and what you, the consultants, are looking for us to do. And one simple request, are we considering month 1 April? Because maybe we should just change the numbers to the actual.
I am,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
That
That would-
I'm
It's
considering,
not that it was considered January. It's just
Yeah.
that.
That's why
I just think that would be.
Month 8 is December.
I'm already behind schedule.
if you look at it,
That's not what it was
really
meant to
gonna
be.
get started,
Yeah.
April is kind of like,
It's just
I'm
whatever
thinking,
the
you know,
first
March,
one
we're
is.
doing the background stuff, but.
Close enough.
Simple.
April. Yeah.
Can we also make just a note to talk about, well, we're gonna talk about the rules now maybe, because
Yeah.
the more I'm sitting here, the more I think we should have a conversation about a more flat organization here. Because I think it's probably helpful to have the advisory committee more involved in the conversations that the task force is having. I'm not sure how it's helpful to us to divide those.
Well, no,
information
because
sessions.
a lot of that stuff is just background, like scheduling the meetings, looking at the town calendar, what days are available for public hearings, what days,
So
so,
I talk to if I want to find out this.
right.
That
Like,
sort of
what
thing.
organizations do I contact if I need to know X, Y, and Z, or who's the fire chief? So I can get in touch with them and set up a meeting, you know, like, it's more that kind of thing.
And also, how many are you? You're 9. 9 people talking to the consultants? No.
It just can't work that way.
We'll figure it out.
But they could be, I mean, we had more of a role to look at our history. We seem to have had more of an involvement and role in the past than looking ahead if we only see 3 blue boxes on the sheet. And why, to pick up Ben's point, why should the task force, which really are members of the town board, be in the position of, you know, of the more advisory role with the consultants? I would,
Your direct
I think
link
we
is
would
through your
appreciate
writing.
We-
more.
Your direct link is
We
through
still
your-
directly communicate with them throughout this entire time. We don't need to wait for a meeting.
We can write to them.
Voices.
Yes,
We put our comments onto the chapters and that goes directly.
that's your voice.
That's our venue to speak directly to the consultants.
It's a little, have you looked, the new format is we can't put side comments.
If
We've
you
got
go
to put them
into-
all at the bottom.
Oh, really?
If you do it at the SharePoint, the way you've always done it through SharePoint, you can put your comments in the chapter.
you
That
want us
hasn't
to do it that way?
changed.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that hasn't changed. So do it the same way you always. Wendy, you had a?
Yeah, just follow up on Sean's comment. If in fact our main responsibility is to read each chapter very carefully with a kind of community behind us to add comments to it, could we prioritize the pending chapters so that maybe we even try to all read them in the same order, so you're getting information in a timely fashion?
That's a great
Yeah, it's a
idea.
great,
Very organized.
very important, otherwise we're all over the.
And I guess my only clarifying point is we are still having monthly meetings like this, or are these 3? I guess I was trying to figure out what was the difference between our monthly meetings
So-
and these 3
Right.
boxes.
You know, these 3 meetings are with the consultants involved.
Okay,
And so that's really a question for the committee. Do you still want to try to meet every month and discuss chapters to give feedback?
I think we better.
Or do you want to really write your notes in the chapters, have the dialogue in the chapters as you're doing your reviews on your own time, when, you know, you can spend the time and think about it, and then come together in these bigger meetings with the consultants?
that would be like,
I think there's an advantage to meeting every month.
Yeah.
Because then as we add our comments there, I may not see everybody else's comments, but we come here and we can then hear, we can kind of go over them together.
Right.
I agree.
I value hearing everyone's comments, and I think we've proceeded that way with 6 maybe of the chapters so far.
Especially if we take it chapter by chapter, we're all processing one chapter at the same time, or the same group of chapters. We are coming here with the same agenda, if you will, and not just all of our random different thoughts and ideas.
Right. Okay. Noah, what do you think about that?
I think that, you know, we would, you know, we could attend some more of those meetings than 3. You know, we put in 3 in the proposal because we wanted to present something that was reasonable, and, you know, we weren't familiar with the dynamic from a budget standpoint, because obviously we're a business. If it's virtual, it's not really it's not as big of a deal for us, than it would be to come out to Shelter Island. So if we could pop in, if one of us pops in for some of those meetings, it wouldn't be a problem. And I think it would be good for us to be at the table if you are talking about issues that are going to be in the plan. So long as we keep it reasonable, but we could certainly attend more of those meetings.
Okay, and it could be one of those things where, we'll discuss a chapter 1 month and then maybe you guys come in and we discuss it with you, or no, I guess do it all at the same time. Yeah, that works. I'll send you the schedule. It's already on our calendar, town calendar, but
Yeah,
all right.
That's fine.
Okay, that sounds good.
We have what, 4 chapters?
Yeah, we have natural resources, land use and zoning, governance, and the housing chapter we never really got into.
Okay.
So we have those 4.
We have 4 big chapters.
I think governance, look at governance, that might be you can do with comments.
Yeah,
I find it short, I find it straightforward.
That's the only one I haven't looked at yet, so I don't know how meaty it is.
Yeah, you might find that
Maybe like, this is the supervisor town.
Here's the tree.
Do you have any recommendations on the order that we look at these?
Well, one thing I'd be curious, not necessarily, like for us, I could see us starting with the chapter that is the kind of low hanging fruit. So we could kind of show basically how we are going to kind of reframe or edit the document and craft it a little bit. Is there a chapter that sticks out as something, the one that's the most innocuous, that we could get started on first and then move on to the others, to give them time to kind of breathe a little bit?
The governance chapter is probably the most straightforward.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to start with that one, it doesn't really have much controversy in it. It's more how we're organized and how we could be organized better and what staff we could bring on to, kind of help the town function more efficiently.
Or at all.
The other 3 are bigger chapters that are going to take more time.
Culture is relatively, I think, safe.
Well, we kind of go
Well,
back
it's
to
going
like.
for chapters that we haven't really.
Oh, that we
Yeah, no, we're not
haven't,
going
I think.
back,
I
yeah.
thought he was going back.
No,
I
some of
wanted to
those are
see something.
penultimate drafts.
No, I guess governance. I haven't looked, that's the only.
I guess that what I meant, sorry, just to clarify, are there chapters that you've already gone through?
Oh, yeah.
That's, I think.
Yeah, they're called,
Oh, I
they're
misunderstood.
labeled
Yeah.
penultimate, yeah.
Yeah, the labels the chapters that were labeled penultimate that we sent you, those have all been very
Broad
thoroughly
agreement.
reviewed.
Okay.
So yeah.
Is there any one of those chapters that seems like a good place to start? Like the kind of.
And I like the
Demographics.
demographics, yes.
That would make picture very.
We agree.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna shut up at some
Yeah,
point.
come on.
That's right, you've got it.
Take a little bit, baby.
We'll have our foundation.
I guess the one thing about demographics is there's not going to be a lot of like recommendations and action items. So it might be a different format when we do the actual chapter layout. So that one's more of like a background existing conditions
Yep.
chapter.
Good point, Emily. How about the history and culture chapter?
I think transportation.
Yeah, the history culture chapter is safe.
And the
Start with that one.
Yeah.
And you'll
Because
learn
there
about
is
our
some-
history and culture.
They've definitely, because there is also some like zoning recommendations for historical zoning and things like that. So that'll give you something to dig your teeth into, but it's also something that's been discussed in the group.
Right, and actually, we got quite a bit of public
Start there,
comments.
'cause you already had some questions on that.
And we had some public comment on that was, like Kim Nolan, she's on this call, and she made some suggestions that were incorporated into that. So that's kind of a really good one.
Yeah, I thought that.
So we'll start with that and we'll kind of work our way through the chapters, and that'll give us some time to talk, about, we'll also be working on the land use and the housing and all these important issues, but as far as the editing and review, we'll kind of start with that one. And meanwhile, we'll have, as I said, have all of these conversations. The land use chapter is the most challenging one because that's really, what are we going to do? It kind of cross-cuts every other chapter. So it's possible that could be, the one that's finished last. That is typically what happens, where, the existing conditions for land use, that's easy, but the actual recommendations is a challenge, and usually that happens at the end.
And just so the committee, it's not so much about wordsmithing the chapters because they will be edited and adapted by the consultants to fit the whole picture and to be digestible by the community. So it's not so much the wordsmithing, but it's content, direction, is it?
I think it's
the proper
findings,
vision for that?
and
Exactly.
challenges.
So
and then
those are the really big
actions.
things you want to look at.
I mean,
Content and,
Yeah,
as you say, action
but
items.
but at the end, when we get to what are the findings, the summary, that's a good place, rather than wordsmith the chapter, are the summary points correct? And then we say challenges, right? And then we go to action points.
Action itemes, the
Yeah.
things that
Uh,
move
that-
it forward.
That's where I think you get to through the chapter and you're sort of fatigued by the most important, and before you get to the most important parts.
Right. Well, I think that's one thing because we have done a review of the chapters and just a sneak preview on kind of what we're thinking. For the findings and challenges, the part that, is really the meat of what we're saying, rather than kind of make it, you have to read through the whole chapter to get to this point, create an executive summary basically at the start of every chapter that says, this is what you need to know. And if you really want to get into the details, you could read through all the data, but present that in an illustrated way, so that those concepts are kind of easy to understand, and take a couple of pages to really explain those ideas and bring them together. Then you can get into the data for the existing conditions. And by the way, I think that can be kind of edited down a little bit because there's a lot of information, and some of it is great, and some of it might just be a little bit extra. You don't want to kind of lose readers. You want to focus on things that are, that are important. And so we'll want to focus on those things. And then, so maybe cut that down a little bit, but then when we get to the action items, we'll want to talk about those more. So really bringing the findings and challenges up to the front, cutting down the existing conditions to, make sure that we're telling a narrative, and then broadening the action items. That's kind of the broad summary.
Great. You mean each chapter needs a plot? Less
Right.
description, more of a plot.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, really nice, Noah. We want to try to set 2 meetings for April for CPAC, whether or not, no? Or, do we want to try to set 2 CPAC meetings to get into the meaty chapter?
What you're thinking about?
We have
We have one, don't we?
The 24th.
Yeah, the
Are we
24th.
still having the public forum?
Are we still having the public? No.
So next Monday, we're not meeting.
No.
I think
No.
The 10th? The 10th?
We were supposed to be the 17th and the 24th. So if you guys have those on your calendar, could we keep them and use them as discussion evenings? And if, if BFJ, whoever can come from your organization, Zoom in, I mean, great. But I'm saying, if you want to do the deep dive into the 3.
Oh, it's the 24th and the what?
17th, or should we already be on your calendar?
So if
17th?
that's the case, then what John had asked is that we set a priority.
Which one? Yeah.
Which one, so we come with our homework done.
Right,
We should
right.
already.
You mean April
Right.
What you were saying was governance would be the easiest.
Right.
Then
I know. Then after that, it's
Natural resources.
Natural
natural
resources, and the hardest would be housing
and housing,
zoning.
and then your
Land
land use.
And are
Okay.
we doing 2 and 2, or are we doing one at?
One at a time.
One at a time.
One at a
Done.
time.
Keep it clear,
Because then we can all, and anybody, we
So
can
just-
tell people on the island and groups that are interested, if it's governance that they're interested in, come into this meeting. It'll be a very clear agenda.
Going on and working in another chapter.
Absolutely.
Right.
I'm prepared to discuss chapter 1.
Governance.
It's
17th.
We're
17th.
What those Andrews.
Okay, and then.
It's important.
Natural resources on the 24th.
Let's just say it
Where
again.
did governance?
On record with.
Wait a minute, whoa.
Hold on.
Wait.
No, what were you trying to say?
I'm just feeling a little bit, I'm just not 100% sure about that approach, only because, just something to consider, we'll be developing draft chapters of the plan at some point. And so I don't want to give off the impression that these are the draft chapters. They're the penultimate chapters, but there will be I just want to make sure that we don't waste, Because if we come back and say, okay, now this is the chapter for government, we want your comments again. Do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to, I don't want to kind of have fatigue from the community where people feel like they commented on something that's old and that's changed. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of my fear is like, if it's like this is a rough draft is what we're talking about, is a rough draft.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know that you need intense community input in the rough draft, but once that draft that we've, sort of polished a little bit is ready for the community to see the entire document, that's really where you want to push public input and really get like everybody involved, because that has at least a solid framework and foundation. So I feel like for these chapters, it's really us making sure that we're hitting all the key points, that we're not missing anything significant, and that, we're giving the consultants the direction that they need to move forward with the chapters, because they're going to edit these. They're not going to look like what we're handing them. So we want to make sure the content is correct and accurate.
The only problem that comes up with that is, for me, having looked at the housing and the zoning, I mean, if you start off in the first 2 pages and you're saying the problem with the island is the current zoning, et cetera, or if you start off by saying the problem with the island is the decentralization of sewer and water, you're taking a position from the very first beginning of the rough draft. And it's not simply a matter of editing, it's a matter of how you're going to come at these big questions that are controversial.
Right, but
I'm talking about how do you approach
That would come
That
from
would
us,
come from
though.
us, so
From
that
you.
commentary and input, write it on the chapter.
I did write it, but I'm saying, no, I'm saying if you're taking a chapter, there are some chapters that seem to be driven very clearly by a certain argument. And it's hard to change it unless you start all over with the help of our consultant and say, how do you deal with a controversial issue like this when you're looking for solutions and action items? So I'd rather put the question to them rather than just give them the chapter.
Well, I think if we have the material and, those issues that are sensitive circled, and highlighted that, there's not necessarily consensus or, on some of these things, that will give us enough information to, dive into those topics and talk them through. And, we will be able to rewrite them if needed, or, talk to people and confirm whatever it happens to be. At least we know that those are issues that we need to focus in on. And I think we'll rely on you to really help us identify some of those issues.
Well, and when we first spoke with them, we explained to Noah and Emily that, housing was a very controversial and complicated chapter, and the housing plan that was just developed was, a very small referendum, vote passed. So they do know that these are controversial chapters. We let them know, housing is complicated on the island. Zoning is complicated. We have a nearshore overlay district. We have all these things. So we were very open and honest with all the issues that the island's facing, because we want a comprehensive plan. We want to make sure it's taking all of this into account. And that is why we have neutral consultants who can take what we've written and fix it with everybody's comments and everybody's perspective.
If you want the paragraph to start off on the right foot, which is pretty much what you're saying, you have to make sure that is done first before you turn it over to the public.
Right.
That's
So it's
exactly what I'm
feedback, too.
trying to say. Or it's going to be a.
So I'm saying that's why on the
Could be an
April
explosion.
17th and the 24th meeting, you had originally said we could get input from the community, and I think what you're trying to say is let's start off on the right foot. We get our input in, then we pass it to the consultants, then it goes to the public. Am I correct?
I don't think.
Yeah, so these are
I was
our working
concerned with starting with
Right,
these.
exactly. We're making
I hate to be confused here, but the one of the 17th is listed as a public forum.
Right, which,
Not a working session for us.
But we
So
can
if
change
that, that was my question.
what
Are
I'm
we
saying.
changing it?
Yes.
Or are we
Yes.
keeping it as a
I hope
public,
so.
but we're not
Please, let's
bringing
change
these
it.
unlooked at chapters?
No, no,
we'll
we
keep
want to
it
have,
as a work session for us. So we'll change it from,
Back to back.
which means it's open to the public, but,
Good.
Like this.
but it's our work session.
Good, it's our work
Yeah,
session.
comments at the end by the
question.
public.
We'll just reschedule the public forum for
Right,
later.
for when we feel like we have a
There's
product.
There's more relevant
Yeah.
products to put in
And it's a
front.
more finalized product.
Yeah.
And our regular meeting is
John?
April
Just
20,
maybe this
well,
one
I
slide.
have it somewhere.
You do.
And I suggested, maybe for the 17th, we can work on governance, but maybe on the 24th, we could be doing the natural.
Why governance, John?
And then the next month, let's do 2 also. So we get 2 done, that way we have done our due diligence,
Yeah, I know, but where
and
did,
then the consultants can have
I
their
like the
will.
hanging fruit.
We have to move along, yeah.
I'd rather go right into a hard.
well, I think, if you do governance in the natural environment, that's a smaller chapter and a bigger chapter. I
Right.
mean, no matter what, we're gonna get slammed with 2 big chapters, but at least let's get the small one out of the way
Okay.
in the beginning, and then you have more time to dig into the zoning, and then.
I think once-
after you have
yeah.
the foundation.
So we're doing government and natural environment, those.
Natural resources, both. Be ready for
So in
both.
April, yeah.
Will be the environment.
17th.
I think I'd be ready with
17th will be
both.
governance.
April
April 24th
24th
will be.
Natural environment.
Natural environment, natural
Both.
resources.
Get ready with
Okay.
both. The reason I say this is, we might get through governance quickly and at least get started on natural environments. Yeah, I think we can tighten up our process a little bit, not to rush, but just to mean like,
Yeah.
let's be
Be very
prepped and
focused.
focused. That's the word I was looking for.
So
Thank you.
governance, natural resources, and will we meet at 6:30?
What, is this a good time?
This is
Okay.
6:30.
I-
I was just gonna say 6 o'clock would be
Listen to
better,
you.
but-
Don't forget, you can have the nap next time, Ben. You can have the nap.
And I know I volunteered to, to attend more meetings. I know I can't make the 17th, and then I could check with the 24th, but we could always
That's fine.
check in with, BJ and Meg and also watch the recording.
You can watch it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
yeah, the video will definitely be available.
Yeah, it'll be
It's on
available.
YouTube.
Mhm.
So tentatively for May, since we know that the land use is going to be a really tough one, and right now it's number 4 or the last one to work on. Housing would be one we could start working on. Be the next one we should work on. So we could make our first date for May, which we talked about possibly the 15th, maybe not. Let's shoot as a goal for that. And just so we have something on the books and it looks like we're doing something specific. on
Yeah.
Yes,
The community who has a response that I can.
That's good.
yes,
Sounds
okay.
good.
So-
One thing that would be very helpful for those meetings, if you could put like an agenda item, for each of those topics, if you can identify specific stakeholders that you think we need to speak with in order to kind of talk about these issues. And, I'm sure that there are specialists for the environment or history and culture. There's always someone in the community that kind of knows everything about some topic. So if there are particular people that we need to speak with, make a note of those.
Thank you.
Actually, on each of the documents we've already sent you, you should have that information on there, that there's either appendices or there's other information that tells you what committee submitted the information to you. So a lot of those people are mentioned in the document.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll make it an easier list, and we'll give you contact information, so that you're not trying to find it all.
So May 15th is what chapter?
Housing.
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 All right, so just to reiterate, April 17th, we're going to do the governance chapter and then roll into the natural environment if we have time. At the April, 24th meeting will be the natural environment chapter. May 15th will be housing. And then what's the next date we have on there in May?
The end of May, I guess
Yeah,
it
it's the
should
end
be.
of May.
It's getting close to Memorial.
It is Memorial Day
The
weekend.
22nd was on our original calendar, already marked.
The
Yeah,
22nd, I think.
Oh, that's not.
22nd?
Memorial Day is the 29th, right?
Right, so it's the week before.
Yep.
So then I guess May 22nd,
Yeah,
if we can, and we'll be zoning.
Zoning, okay.
So those 2 weeks are back to back.
yep.
Right.
That's.
Both of them are. April too, April as well.
Around.
Much time, let's get to work.
I may have to zoom in
On.
on one of this, but.
I'll be, yeah, we should plan that we've got like a forum.
Yeah.
If some-
So we're just gonna really need everyone to RSVP that they can make it
Yeah,
to the
that's
meeting,
crucial.
so that we know we have a quorum. so that we don't waste people's time, because if we don't have a quorum, we can't have the meeting. Okay.
Did we change it to, we need?
We'll change the resolution so it goes to 5 instead of the 6 that we're.
That will help
currently
us.
From everyone
I have the
except
CPAC.
maybe the 17th. Then that'll be here.
All my
All right,
minutes.
so everyone has that plan going forward?
Yeah, we could.
So in other words, I have to have my taxes filed for the 17th.
Yeah. All right.
In October, maybe, yeah.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions for the consultants? Anybody?
We thank you, and we're very happy to have you on board, despite all the complications we've brought up. We're really very, very appreciative.
If you do this, if you do this for a living, I'm sure it's not your first.
No, it's not our first, but it's unusual to have a plan that is where we already have something in place. And so I know it might feel like a long road, but you've done a lot of work, and we're thankful to really take what you've done and hopefully polish it, make it better, and create a plan that you're proud of. That's our hope. But we're really working off of a lot of good work. So we thank you for that.
I do have one question before you go. Did your charge include reviewing the 93 plan?
Yeah. I mean, I think
It has to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, when we review it, we'll read through it just to make sure that we're kind of up to speed on, historic patterns and what's happened in the last, since the other plan was done, and if any zoning changes in particular happens, we kind of want a tick-tock of what's happened in the community for at least the last 20 years.
They were provided with the 94, the 2008 that never got adopted, the Dodson and Finkler documents that were done when we first began, all of the chapters with your comments, and all of the comments we've received from the community at large. So all of that was given to the consultants, so they have everything. And they've also been in contact with Dodson and Finkler to get copies of all the maps and stuff so that they can update the maps. And so that's the kind of coordination that BJ and I have been doing with them to make sure they have all the information that they need.
And I'm on all those emails,
Yes.
and I'm not a town council member. I see everything going through.
Yes.
And also, I just want to recognize the work that the task force has done. It's done a lot of hard work, and I thank you for it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, on that note, I think we kind of know what the plan is moving forward. Be prepared with the governance and natural environment chapters for the 17th. So April, that's our month. And then, and we'll be in touch.
Okay.
All right. And
Thank you.
One thing, okay, so BJ and I were talking about the best way to provide the CPAC's feedback to the consultants. And we were thinking it would be best if we had it go through a central hub so nothing gets lost. It's hard when you're getting 7 or 8 different emails and they just, so we're thinking either send everything to Coco and then Coco will compile it all and then it'll all go on Friday to the consultants or, the beginning of the week so that everything from the week can get collected and it can all go out in one batch so nothing gets lost or mixed in the shuffle.
Right, and if it's Petra's got a question and I have the same question, it's already been asked.
Right.
I just have to wait for the answer.
Consolidate it all into one.
Or, or know that it's being addressed. You might not even get an answer. If it's something that you really want in the chapter and the consultant thinks it agrees with you, maybe that's just how it goes.
That makes sense.
The couple, I'm not sure how
Just so that, things, you don't have to worry about it going to spam. You don't have to worry about it getting, missed or something. So that's what we were thinking of as far as procedure going forward, so it doesn't get confusing.
I see there's someone with their hand up. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, Phil?
Yes. Is it time?
Yes, it is.
Am I the only one?
Sorry.
Well, so good evening, everybody. Thank you all for your service. So if I'm restating something, I apologize. But I just wanted to make the point that from what I have read, the assertions made or the conclusions made in some of the recent chapters are, from my perspective, totally inappropriate. They're based on conjecture, not based on facts and data and information. As an example, the assertion that the Community Preservation Fund is somehow a culprit in housing prices. Maybe. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know that we've actually analyzed home prices on Shelter Island relative to home prices on the South Fork. And I think before we can make conclusions about things that have driven things happening, we should actually compare ourselves to some of these other areas. I know I've said before many times, we need data and information and science to have conclusions. I've early on suggested we have traffic consultants. I've suggested that we have water consultants.
What Comp
analyses behind this. Well, and the last point I'll make is that my understanding is that Assemblyman Thiel helped create the Community Preservation Fund. I find it ironic that he's now the one who created the amendment to create the Community Housing Fund. Clearly, something if he was making something now to remedy something he did, something wasn't thought out very well. Everything we do here needs to be thought out very, very well. I'm happy to have a consultant here, but whoever made the point earlier that we can't start off a chapter with conjecture. We need to start, if there's a problem, we can say we have a problem with housing. We should say the problem with housing is because of X, Y, and Z without actually data and information to prove that. That's just not good governance. And to Ms. Dion Foley, who says not a way to run a country, I think that when Congress tries to pass laws, they have hearings and testimony and public comment and all kinds of input, including experts around it, where people get to come and testify. So I'm happy if we run it that way.
Good, I'm glad you paid attention and saw that calendar and all the meetings we plan on having with the public and various subsectors of the public. So we've heard you. We've definitely heard you.
Kim?
Hi, everybody. Like all the people here, we're thanking all the participants and especially the consultants. But I think the tenor of this meeting gives the consultants a little bit of a taste of how a lot of people are not liking what's in the chapters, especially the last 4 that are arguably the guts of a comprehensive plan and that were delivered just a couple weeks ago so that the CPAC, which is the Citizens Advisory Committee, a lot of them haven't even had a chance to read them. Now, the CPAC was their original charter was to guide the comprehensive task force. And I think you're probably aware of the history, which is the first comprehensive plan task force all resigned. And then we have a new comprehensive task force that is basically, as was pointed out, and this is not a value judgment, it's a fact that there's 2 members that are on the town board. So you can see that the comments about why rush this because we could have a complete change of government here, that kind of stuff. I mean, this is all very relevant to what's going on. So I'm particularly pleased to know that there's going to be all this, kind of public input going forward. And I think it would be really helpful. I'm sorry, I haven't been on the video, but you can see my face now, I think. I think it'd be really helpful to get out right away what the change timeline is and what the meetings are, because a lot of people are very concerned that this plan will be kind of rushed through and adopted before they get a chance to talk about it. And keeping in mind that, our Citizen Advisory Committee was selected and does represent, as they themselves said tonight, pockets of the community. I think that the other pockets of the community that should be recognized is the neighborhood associations. Now, I happen to be the president of the Shelter Island Association, which represents 10 neighborhoods. So you get where I'm coming from. We would really like to be heard on every aspect of these most important chapters. And in case, because nobody discussed it tonight, the natural environment chapter includes water, which has been one of the most singularly important and kind of controversial issues for the island for many, many years. But so far, it's, folded into the natural environment, which of course it's right. And I'm just saying the upcoming meeting is very, very important. And, we're going to be very interested. Now, I just have a couple quick questions for the consultants. Can you please tell me, you have excellent credentials. Can you please tell me what zoning plans that you have drafted for the East End?
Oh, a lot. I mean, we're working in the village of Southampton right now.
Okay.
On an overlay district.
What kind of overlay district, may I ask?
It's in the village center. It's called an arts and culture overlay district.
Okay.
I mean, it kind of feels like a lot to count. We did a lot of work in Garden City, a lot of work in North Hempstead, a lot of plans. I mean, we've done zoning work kind of throughout the region. It's, I would say, a big part of what we do. Is writing zoning, sometimes not always drafting the zoning, but as part of the plans, we will create recommendations that result in zoning changes after the plan is done. So it's certainly a part of the planning process that we're very familiar with.
I know that you're probably extremely well qualified, but I would like to read. I'm going to read the overlay district that you just referred to. And if you could give me like just another couple East End things that I could refer to.
Kim, their response to our RFP is on our town website. And on that, it lists all the different comprehensive plans that they have worked on. So please feel free to take that list and go to each village and town and
question
pull
them.
their comprehensive plan and read it, because that's
okay, Meg, I'm really sorry because I did look at the 66-page document, but I was just hoping like 2 comments like, oh yeah, we did Southampton, we did Riverhead. You can look at those. Sorry, I will go back to the 66 pages. And again, I will appreciate everyone who spends hours on this task because it's critically important for this island, which the supervisor has said is at, no pun intended, a watershed. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. And I think to follow up with that, I understand your concern about our qualifications. I wish Frank Fish was on the call. He's kind of our zoning expert. And has worked in the community and will be involved in this plan, has worked throughout the region of Long Island for,
one thing without going to
I would say, for over 30 years.
make it easy.
you guys are reading the mic.
That's all right.
Sorry,
Noah.
Oh, no, it's fine.
I'm not, you know what? I really didn't mean to give the impression that I'm worried about your qualifications. They look really great, frankly. I just was trying to shortcut some work that I'm going to be doing. So sorry about that. Sorry, Meg.
No worries. I was just letting you know where you could find a comprehensive list because it seemed like that's what you were asking for.
Yeah, and I did. I saw it. It was a pretty comprehensive list. Yeah. But it's just like honing in on East End issues, and also islands are different. So I was just, like I said, trying to shortcut a little bit.
I mean, it's not, the zoning, I would say, we're doing zoning in Southampton Village, but their plan, I would say, has a lot of similar issues as Shelter Island. Obviously, Shelter Island is very different, being an island, and there are certainly issues, but the size of the community is somewhat similar. Just the number of people, the seasonal aspect,
environmental
concern about natural resources and water quality, and there are a lot of similar issues that we addressed. So it would be worth reading that plan. It's the most recent one that we did. We just adopted it. There also are other zoning things that we are working with. We haven't done it yet, but we are going to work on affordable housing zoning text to try and promote some other housing types in their office districts. It's not something that we don't have a draft yet, but it's something that we plan to work with the village on shortly.
Excellent. Thank you for answering my questions. Appreciate it.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for the consultants or any other member of the CPAC? All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting and go home?
So moved.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Noah and Emily, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for having us.
I look forward to working with you guys.
You too.